Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you all to kindly switch off your mobile phones. The use of mobile phones in the auditorium may lead to strained relationships with your neighbors. We will be having the Chief of Army Staff, the CDS, and our chief guest, the Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh Ji, in some time. The Honorable Chief Guest will be here by 15:55 hours. Until then, the sequence of events for today are flashed for your reference, please. This will be followed by the welcome address by DG USI. Then we will have the book overview by General Raj Shukla, who is the author of the book Civil Military Fusion as a Metric of National Power and Comprehensive Security. This will be followed by the address by the Chief of Army Staff and special address by the Chief of Defense Staff. The keynote address will be delivered by the chief guest, Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh Ji. We are now awaiting the arrival of the Chief of the Army Staff. May I also request you all, when the chief guest arrives, if you could stand up, it would be a good gesture. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I just have your attention, please? I'm General Yadav from USI. A humble request, uh, because of the security reasons of the Honorable Raksha Mantri, we will request that after the first part of the program is over, that is the first book release, the RM is supposed to leave and he will have a cup of tea before that. Because of the restricted space, I will request that the first three rows only to move to the pavilion and rest to please hold on for a minute or so, and then we all collectively have tea in the foyer oblique down below there. So please bear with us. It's so nice to see all of you here, but the security aspect needs to be kept in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we also would be having a second book launch after the chief guest leaves from here. We are very honored to have with us Lieutenant Colonel Arul Raj, a brand name in sketching and painting. Sir, thank you very much for being here. And the book has been authored by Major General Ian Cardozo, Portraits of Valor. So may I request you all to kindly stay back for that as well, for the second book launch. Thank you very much.
हेलो 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 ठीक है एक उधर लगा है आप वेपन कैरी कर रहे हैं
Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, the Honorable Minister of Defense, Ms. Rajnath Singh is here. Sir, Jain, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a singular honor to have in our midst today the Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh Ji. The nation is indeed fortunate to have Shri Rajnath Singh Ji as a Raksha Mantri at a moment of critical challenges to our national security. Thank you very much for gracing the event, sir. I would like to begin with a few lines by Makhan Lal Chaturvedi, who wrote Pushp Ki Abhilasha. चाह नहीं मैं सुर बाला के गहनों में गूंदा जाऊं, चाह नहीं प्रेमी माला में बिन प्यारी को ललचाऊं, चाह नहीं सम्राटों के शव पर हे हरि डाला जाऊं, चाह नहीं देवों के सर पर चढ़ूं भाग्य पर ठलाऊं, मुझे तोड़ लेना वन माली, उस पथ पर बिना तुम फेंक, मातृभूमि पर शीश चढ़ाने जिस पथ जाए वीर अनेक. Ladies and gentlemen, the book we launched today addresses a topical and important theme: civil-military fusion. The book will hopefully persuade readers to reconsider their perspectives and deepen their understanding of the subject and its impact on national security. We gather to celebrate not just the publication, but also the creativity, dedication, and insight that the author hopefully brings to the world of strategic analysis and military literature. To commence the proceedings of the day, may I now request Major General B.K. Sharma, Director General, USI of India, to deliver the welcome note. Sir, please.
Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji, Chief of Defence Staff, Chief of Army Staff, General V.N. Sharma, General Deepak Kapoor, General Manoj Pandey, CISC, who is also the President of the Council. Then we have Mr. Professor Dalip Shah, who is the Dean of Bhawanipur Education Society College from Calcutta, and they are the ones who had instituted this chair of excellence under which this work has been done by General Raj Shukla. Also, we have amidst us Shri M.J. Akbar. There are UPSC members, DGs of think tanks, council members, media personalities, many distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to welcome Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji to the United Service Institution of India, a venerable institution with 156 years of glorious history. We know that Honorable Prime Minister of India has emphasized the whole of nation approach to the defense of the nation. And likewise, our Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji has also enunciated that it is civil-military fusion that shall provide the bulwark for future military campaigns. In keeping with the importance of civil-military fusion, the Bhavani Education Society Chair of Excellence, instituted at the USI, was allotted to Lieutenant General Raj Shukla for seminal research on this crucial theme. It is a classic example of collaboration between a defense think tank and academic society. Together, it embodies the credo, service through knowledge. The book Civil-Military Fusion is a metric of national power and comprehensive security. It explores how strengthening the civil-military fusion can result into comprehensive national security. We look forward to some illuminating thoughts on the subject. This being Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji's first visit to USI, allow me to talk a little bit about the institution. Founded in 1870, the USI was initially conceived as a forum of strategic reflection and planning. Until 2002, the Honorable President of India was our patron. The Government of India was gracious to provide aid from the Prime Minister's Defence Welfare Fund for the construction of this premises. These gestures symbolize the deep and continued bond between the USI and our nation. Presently, USI Vision 2030 is fully aligned with the lofty goal of Viksit Bharat and also vision of Viksit, what you call is the Atmanirbhar Bharat 2047. It also meets the knowledge needs of the armed forces. Since our inception and particularly after independence, the institution has blossomed into 7 centers of excellence, looking at whole range of issues. In fact, presently, we are doing a large number of military heritage projects in collaboration of Ministry of Defense to preserve and promote India's military heritage. We have 16 chairs of excellence, conduct memorial lectures, and also organize Indian Military Literature Heritage Festival. USI Journal is Asia's oldest journal, being published since 1871. Our heritage library has more than 72,000 books, and some of these books are of 16th and 17th century vintage. We take a number of study projects for different ministries, conduct strategic gaming exercises, not only for military establishment, but also for the civil services training establishments. Every year, we train nearly 1,500 officers for their promotion and competitive exams. USI is actually contributing to the cause of Atmanirbhar Bharat to create an ecosystem and enhancing cybersecurity awareness. USI is also part of Global UN Alliance, bringing India's voice and vision to the world. USI has about 1,500 members, 15,000 members, and it's headed by the CISC, who sits on top of the 24-member USI Council, which has serving senior officers and also veterans from the armed forces and civil services. Sir, we have tie-ups with about 90 nations and think tanks from India and abroad. And finally, allow me to bring to RM's kind notice that although USI is an autonomous institution, all its work is related to defense and security. For its sustenance and growth, it requires patronage and financial support from the Ministry of Defense to transform this heritage institution into a world-class center of excellence. We are sanguine that with RM's guidance and support, we will serve the cause of India's defense and security in a much better way. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now request Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, the author of the book, to please come and say a few words about the book, sir.
माननीय रक्षा मंत्री जी श्री राजनाथ सिंह, the Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, the Chief of Army Staff General Upen Dwivedi, former chiefs CISC, my current and former colleagues at the Union Public Service Commission, distinguished guests, soldiers past and present, friends, ladies and gentlemen. आप सबको दिवाली की ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं. A very happy Diwali to you all. As also thank you for taking the time out from your Diwali frenzy, post-Diwali hangover to get together here this evening. सर्वप्रथम मैं कृतज्ञ हूं माननीय रक्षा मंत्री जी का. आपने इस पुस्तक विमोचन के लिए मेरा निमंत्रण स्वीकार किया, समय निकाला. आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और दिल से गहरा आभार. मेरा ये भी सौभाग्य है कि मुझे आपका स्नेह और आशीर्वाद प्राप्त है. May I also express my deep gratitude to the Chief of Defense Staff and the Chief of Army Staff for gracing the occasion. I'm grateful indeed. A big thank you to the Director General USI, Major General B.K. Sharma, the Bhawanipur Education Society, its Dean, Professor Dilip Shah, and my publisher, Mr. Rajan Arya, who have been in the trenches with me in helping to bring the book out. Bringing out the book, by the way, I have discovered is no mean task. It is certainly more difficult than commanding a division, a corps, or even an army. Let me now turn to the substantive issue for which we have all gathered, the book on civil-military fusion. Well, the subject has for long been in my head and pretty close to my heart. My tryst with civil-military fusion began as civil-military relations, as the subject was labeled back then, when I embarked on a fellowship in the subject as a colonel way back in 2009, not too far away from here at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, IDSA, in fact, just behind me across the wall. In the course of that year, certain standout postulates of CMR theories and commentaries caught my eye, pushing me to plumb the subject in greater depth. So just three of those postulates. One of the postulates is that vital issues of statecraft are determined by the pattern of institutional interaction between the civil and military components of a nation's polity. So that got me thinking that the objectives of CMR are deep and lofty. They are not just about public posturing and the occasional lip service, but very consequential for statecraft and national security. And these are direct quotes from prominent theorists. CMF, I discovered, is also a matter of great practical utility. So from the mundane to the profound, civil-military fusion is a key ingredient of modern statecraft. That's the first postulate. The second postulate, and this is Peter Fever, he says the ordering of civil-military relations, therefore, lies at the heart of a nation's security framework. So Kendra Bindu, that is how critical the subject is. The third postulate says, while being rooted in the firm, unambiguous, complete political control of the military, a robust and vibrant civil-military relationship produces a polity that is alive to the nuances of national security and wise to the uses of military power. So not a military to jackboot around the world, but a calibrated, technologically enabled, precise and lethal instrument of force with diverse capacities and capabilities that strengthen deterrence and expand the range of political options. Now, the significance of this needs to be underlined. I'll just take 30 seconds. Once again, this gentleman whom I quoted, Peter Fever, a noted CMR scholar, captures the concept of complete, unambiguous political control vividly. He says the civilian, the political principle and not the bureaucratic agent, the civilian is right even when he's wrong. The civilian has a right to be wrong. He asserts militaries only salute and obey. So the standards of political control in democracies are quite overwhelming. But, and this is what the theories go on to say, that once such control is a settled matter, as is the case happily in India, the civil-military polity together must work, nudge, push, move the relationship towards greater strategic productivity, ever higher vistas of combat delivery, and operational poise. Now, this is a great challenge. That is the case that I make in my book for a speedy transition from a sound, stable CMR regimen, which we are lucky, happy to be in, to the more disruptive, transformative, productive paradigm of civil-military fusion. That is the essence of my thesis. In fact, in modern practice, CMF, and military. It is the thoughtful coming together of every arrow in the quiver of a nation's statecraft, every talent, every attribute, every entity, the civil services, diplomacy, the military and the wider uniformed services, thought leaders, the scientific, technological, and strategic communities, the technology geeks, who, let me tell you, are a different commodity altogether, business icons and startups in a fused enterprise of pragmatic realism to strengthen the sinews of national security. Now, the national security makeover that has been set into motion by this government, the creation of a CDS DMA, the CDS, in fact, is the Sutradhar of civil-military fusion because he operates at the intersect of the military, defense, strategic, and civil domains. The infusion into Atmanirbharta and defense of the innovation, energy, and enterprise of the private sector and startups, that is quite a novelty, let me tell you, and quite unprecedented in the Indian context. The new normals that we've seen in our strategic outlook, Kailash, Balakot, etc., defense coming out of the shadows of foreign policy, these are all landmark steps, and they are the consequence of a vibrant civil-military relationship. We have initiated the process of dissolving the various silos that we had got used to operate in. But CMF is about setting aside tribalism in all shapes and forms and collapsing the silos completely at speed and scale. Now, that is, as we all know, particularly in the military, is a huge challenge. It is about overcoming the fear of what might go wrong that comes in the way of doing what will hugely go right. So the crossing the Rubicon of tribalism is key. Once we do that, we will see the value of diverse talent. And India is full of talent because CMF is about talent from anywhere, talent from everywhere. In any case, perhaps we have little choice in the matter because the leading global actors, China, USA, and Israel, our competitors, adversaries, partners, and friends alike, are zooming towards new vistas in CMF with huge consequences for strategic military competition and national security. In Ukraine, most visibly, CMF is touching dizzying heights. So here is a snapshot of examples to illustrate how CMF is trending globally, and that will tell us what we must do for CMF in our context. So let us begin with China. In China, military-civil fusion, as the practice is called there, perhaps because the military is in the lead, MCF has transformed the sturdy house that Ding Deng built for the Chinese to live in into this modern mansion of fused civil-military capacities by President Xi. President Xi himself propounds the case for civil-military fusion with a typical Chinese aphorism. Why build walls of granite, he asks, between civil-military cylinders of excellence? I mean, as simple as that. And proceeds to personally chair, since 2017, the MCF Development Commission in China and accelerate the diffusion of MCF through every activity and endeavor of civil and military life in China. The PLA Navy today is a formidable 3-aircraft carrier force that boasts of electromagnetic propulsion and stealth capacities. We know all that. There was a time, however, in 1997-98, when it did not have a single aircraft carrier, not even the technology and know-how to make one, 97-98. So the Chinese Communist Party then set its eyes on a decommissioned old Soviet cruiser called the Varyag and the critical blueprints of aircraft carriers lying in one of the Ukrainian shipyards. Since a military sale was out of question, the Chinese set up a tall and handsome basketball player from the Guangzhou military region, Zhu Zhengping, to masquerade as a business tycoon looking for a floating casino in Macau. I mean, that's how it all began in the Chinese context. And the casino being the obvious facade front for aircraft carriers. To refurbish the image of a business tycoon, the Chinese Huaxia Bank funded a $30 million villa in Hong Kong for Zhu, with swanky offices in Kiev and Beijing. It took years of vexatious negotiations for the deal to come through, with Zhu managing to get the final nod, not only for the Varyag, renamed later as the Liaoning, but also critical blueprints for the Chinese aircraft carriers to follow, Shandong, Fujian. Now, having secured the deal, the Liaoning sails from Kiev to Ankara en route to Dalian. In Ankara, it gets entangled yet again, this time in Turkish intelligence and bureaucracies. To resolve the imbroglio, no less than President Jiang Zemin himself flies into Ankara to set the carrier free through a deal that included Chinese market access to Turkish companies. China's famed military modernization is punctuated with scores of such stories, many of which I record in the book, where we see the coming together of wily statecraft, strategic deception, commercial fronting, diplomatic maneuvering, and apex state intervention in service of the national interest. This is China's version of the DPP and the DPM. The Chinese State Shipbuilding Corporation, the CSSC, which has come to be known as the poster child of CMF in China, in a similar vein, is a fused four-tiered network of shipyards that power both ambitions in global commerce as also in structuring a world-class navy. There is no distinction between the two. So while tiers 1 and 2 of the CSSC have close links with the PLA, the commercial tiers 3 and 4, also by clever design architecture, are closely intertwined with the military tiers, providing both much needed capital and technology infusion for the PLA Navy. Little wonder then the people from the Navy would be knowing it. For me, it came as one big shock. Last year, the CSSC in a single year in 2024 produced more shipping by tonnage than all the shipping tonnage that the Americans have produced since World War II. Stunning. Concurrently, so that's global commerce. Concurrently, the plan is cruising to be a 450 ship navy by 2030, the world's largest. Courtesy civil-military fusion. Look at how the startup system operates in China. If you're a startup in China, even a civilian one, it is very likely that you will get your first order from the PLA. If you are a bright startup, the PLA will hold your hand till commercial viability so that you can survive, play in the market. And if you are particularly brilliant, it will partner with you to destroy the adversary American startup lurking in the distant horizon. It's not just about L1 and procedures, it's about competition. So the tone and tenor is strategic, the objectives long-term, with the emphasis on winning the techno-military competition. CMF focused on strategic outcomes and not mere procedural compliance. In fact, if I may risk an assertion here, it is my judgment that if there is one overwhelming reason why China is outcompeting all democracies, including the United States of America, it is on the account of its deft leveraging of military-civil fusion. That is how salient MCF is. Ukraine, since there's no time, just in a couple of lines. In Ukraine, CMF has coalesced like never before. The warfighter, the technologist, Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, Alex Karp, CEO of a CIA venture-funded startup called Palantir. So startups are strategic investments funded by the CIA. And the innovationist Palmer Luckey, the theater of war and the marketplace have fused seamlessly, enabling Ukraine, a country without a navy or even an air force, to discover a novel art and science, that of dronery, to keep one of the world's most formidable militaries, Russia, at bay for 3.5 years. Incredible is the only word to describe such coming together of civil and military capacities for a national cause. So CMF has reimagined modern warfare. The onset of dronery has altered the operational paradigm in Ukraine by an order of magnitude. This year in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are manufacturing 5 to 8 million drones, more than the artillery they fired last year. So the artillery is challenged. Tanks don't move, sadly. Maneuver has been eclipsed. Soldiers prefer golf carts and motorcycles, else they won't survive. Piloted air power is absent. Dronery has created a new low aerial flank with ranges from 25 kilometers to 3,000 kilometers, providing an amazing range of options from close air support to strategic air power. To catch up with the Chinese competition and global trends in USA and Ukraine, the Americans too are now embracing CMF. Returning to the CMI, civil military integration, they once practiced with consummate ease. Shyam Shankar, in his book Unit X and on that brilliant paper Defense Reformation, tells us that before the collapse of the Berlin Wall in November 1989, Ford, the car company, made cars and satellites. Chrysler made cars and missiles. General Mills, a cereal company, तो वो अनाज बनाती थी, artillery and inertial guidance systems. That was CMI. Till the Americans regressed and the Chinese took over, and the realities are there before us. So the wizards of America's digital revolution today are being pushed and bullied by Trump, the Silicon Valley companies, to move away from shiny consumer products and apps and to integrate with the American security apparatus in order to beat China in the new arms race for artificial intelligence and the allied umbrella of technologies. The technology geeks from Silicon Valley are abandoning their soft beliefs to embrace hard power and are ever so steadily moving from the business of building video games and photo sharing apps to the challenges of closing combat kill chains. Christopher Wray, the former director of FBI, says Sino-American competition is no longer merely whole of government. We keep talking of whole of government. He says the CMF competition is fast becoming a war between the two societies, whole of society. That is how cutthroat the competition is becoming of bleeding edge technologies and talent. So as we all know, just I think 2 months back, what came to be known as Det 201, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed an executive order inducting the chief technical officers of 4 American private sector company startups as lieutenant colonels into the American military. Thinking Machines Lab, Bob McGrew, Palantir, Shyam Shankar, Meta, Andrew Bosworth, and OpenAI, Kevin Well, to correct what experts describe as the American military's shallow engagement with technology. I mean, the Americans are saying their engagement with technology is shallow. These tech pros now work on targeted military projects to help build rapid and scalable technology solutions to complex military problems. The results are already beginning to show in terms of a revamp of the military marketplace. So Det 201, just to give you one example, was asked to undertake a review of the repair maintenance topology of the Black Hawk, the attack vector which we all have heard of. And they discovered that for a fin for a Black Hawk's external fuel tank, the vendor was charging $144,000. $144,000. So Det 201, since they are these technology geeks, they took 3D, scanned the part, reverse engineered it, printed prototypes, and structurally validated it in 43 days. And the 3D printed replacement part costs just $3,000. $144,000 to $3,000. In another example, the aviators here will identify with this. There was a small screen control knob that pilots used to scroll data. Now, if it broke, as we all know, the aircraft was grounded for days. And what did this part cost? $47,000 for replacement. Once again, 3D, once again, prototypes, and they've got the cost down to $15. $15. And just for this knob, the Pentagon was paying $188,000 every month. Now it is $60 a month. So, and how have they done it? By getting speed 3D printing machines from a startup in Melbourne. The soldiers were trained at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is under the Army Futures Command, which is a CMF project of academics and military men. And CMF is being used to depress costs. And with the success in Black Hawk, the project is now being expanded to other domains like Bradley. When I was the Army Commander RTRAC, I got my technical advisors to investigate this, and I was told, sir, 3D printing is a good thing, but it is not cost effective. Here, it is depressing costs. So the point is, when you get external talent in, these are the things that will happen. By bringing high-end private sector know-how into uniform, Det 201 is supercharging efforts like the Army Transformation Initiative, which aims to make the military leaner, smarter, more cost-effective, and more lethal. Strategic choke points. Over the last 2 decades, strategic affairs commentators like Robert Spalding, author of The Stealth War, have been cautioning fellow Americans that while the USA was asleep at the wheels, China was on a manufacturing technology military capacity blitzkrieg. These voices were ignored. And look at the consequences. China, in the meanwhile, used classical CMF instruments like the 1,000 Talents Plan and the Diaspora Strategy to gain overwhelming advantage across domains. So look at this example. What was this 1,000 Talents Plan? It was stitched together by the CCP and the PLA. It was a program to recruit technological geniuses from around the world to give a fillip to both civilian technologies and PLA's techno-military poise. 4 million researchers, 40,000 elite scientists, some of whom were Nobel laureates, winners of the Alan Turing Medal. And they have invested in AI, quantum, robotics, and the like. And look at one result. 2003 to 2007, in all these emerging critical technologies, the USA, the sole superpower, led in 60 out of 65 technologies. After applying these CMF instruments like the 1,000 Talents Plan and Diaspora Strategy, the reality in 2019-23 is that China leads in 57 out of 65. Such dramatic inversion of technology leadership. And as I said, all these leverages of advantage are now being turned into strategic choke points in the ensuing geopolitical competition. Rare earths, as we all know, is only the beginning. So Chinese manufacturing capacity, and I'll just give you some examples how the whole scene has changed. Chinese manufacturing capacities today are twice that of USA. Power generation 2 times, steel production 13 times, cement 20 times, shipbuilding 200 times, warship production 3 times. And because of this whole change in the civilian production capacities, China's military industrial complex today, on American admission, is 5 to 6 times more efficient than USA. In next generation industrial robots, China leads 7 times. Robotic ammunition factories in China give China a surge manufacturing capacity of 10,000 cruise missiles a week, while the Americans do not have 7 days of precision munitions for a prospective fight in Taiwan. 50% of the world's top AI researchers today are Chinese. And the point really is this, that since most, if not all these technologies' capacities lie at the cusp of civil-military fusion, they will convert invariably, inevitably, into strategic military advantage. So look at rare earths. It goes into your ships, aircraft, missiles, submarines, radars. Without rare earths, it is impossible to field a modern army. So is the case with chips, LLMs, now agentic AI. The last example on my list is Israel. The Israeli Air Force, we all know, is world-class. But it would be nothing without an active, technologically enabled CMF component, the young, innovative geniuses, geeks of the legendary units 8200 and 9300. Top-class talent from high schools and universities, accorded an unusual degree of freedom, one that is alive to thrive on creativity and imagination. And they are connoisseurs in wraparound technologies like EW, space, and cyber that give the Israeli intelligence and targeting ecosystem an unprecedented edge. The know-how as to where Nasrallah was sleeping every night since 2006, even though the Israelis, as we all know, chose to take him out only on 30th September 2024. The point that I make is that unless you invest in these capacities of CMF, you will never get the targeting capacities what Israel boasts of. So it is CMF that brings to the Israeli ecosystem a kind of Israeli jugalbandi in intelligence and targeting process that enables the supply chain capture leading to exploding pagers. It also, the Israelis did this. They first prompted the IRGC to convene a meeting of top Iranian commanders. And once they got a signal that all of them had assembled, they proceeded to bomb them. Now, this is all because of, much of this is happening because of this, this CMF. The Indian context. So the power of CMF, its salience as a strategic imperative, is hopefully evident. I have written about it at great length in my book. Of course, and I must reiterate it, not all of the examples that I quoted can be replicated with exactitude in the Indian context, because we are not USA, we are not Israel, we are not China, but we have to adapt them into our context. In my book, which is rather slim, since I don't have the talent that M.J. Akbar Sahab has of elegant poetry or prose, I present my understanding of global best practices in CMF, a series of connected clinical arguments, and a precise and detailed roadmap for possible adaptation in the Indian context. Since there's no time, I shall not allude to the roadmap. But the larger point I would like to make is this. CMF is a sophisticated craft. It is as much about guile as it is about being smart. It, in fact, harks back to the old Indian tradition of Sam Dam Dand Bhed, which is national interest by means fair or foul. It is about the ability to make hard choices. Each day that we delay on theater commands, there will be consequences, and resolute execution. It has distinct ideational, cultural, structural, technological, and innovational attributes that, in my view, need to be explored for adoption in the Indian context. Our technology missions, for example, AI, chips, robotics, quantum, need to be baked in the sauce of CMF. It is also my understanding that 60 to 70% of CMF endeavors are ideational, cultural, and structural. They are budget agnostic. There are no costs. They are just about changing our attitudes in our minds. So the CMF discourse needs to capture the national imagination and enliven the national security mind space if India is to attain its place and promise in the world. CMF may well be the secret sauce to fuel, fortify, and secure India's rise. It would please me no end if my modest offering energizes conversations and, more importantly, actions in this regard. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to end on a personal note. I would like to dedicate this book not to my wife, as many obedient husbands do, but to many of my teachers, mentors, and I really mean this, peers, subordinates, acquaintances, and friends, some of whom are present in this audience, who have inculcated in me the spirit of inquiry, research, and original investigation. To the youngsters in the crowd, may I say this: there is nothing as valuable and powerful as these tools, inquiry, research, and original investigation, in concert, of course, with the independent application of your own mind and a firm belief in your convictions. Contrary to popular belief, the ecosystem of the Indian military places a great premium on intellect and allied pursuits. Some of the finest minds that this nation could boast of hail from the Indian military. Some of them may even be in the hall. The Indian Army soldier, too, even when he does not have the benefit of formal higher education, has doles of combat wisdom, what we in Hindi may call shaurya or vivek. I would just like to give you one example. So I had one sahayak or assistant, as we call him, Thapa, from the Gurkhas, 4x1 GR. And, as army commander, RTRAC and all, you went to give talks here and there. So when I was in some forward post, I would tell him, Thapa, yaar, wo kitab nikal ke lakhna. Genesis, Henry Kissinger, New Cold Wars, David Sanger. And when I first told him, I thought there was not a chance on earth. And when I would come back, at times, he would not only put the book, he would flag it. तो मैंने कहा ये कैसे? And he could not speak a word in English. You please believe. नहीं sir, उस दिन आप ये बात कर रहे थे, मैंने ये notice किया. Gagan is here, he will swear by it. He was the best researcher that I ever had. So this is what the Indian Army is all about. So being a product of the Indian military in general and the Indian Army in particular, I dedicate this book to the lakhs of soldiers, sailors, and airmen who constitute this very vibrant frame of steely valor, raw courage, but also brain and brawn. An entity that encourages and nurtures a unique ethos, that of thinking like men of action and acting like men of thought. On that note, allow me to conclude. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a patient hearing. Remember, this is a military book launch. Nobody gets out of the hall alive without buying a copy of the book. Thank you. Thank you once again, Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji, for presiding over the launch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your journey and vision have inspired this book, Civil Military Fusion as a Metric of National Security. And it is an honor for all of us to share this moment together. Thank you for your insights and wisdom, sir. May I now request General Upendra Dwivedi, Chief of the Army Staff, to address the gathering, please, sir.
Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh Ji, Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, Director General USI Major General V.K. Sharma, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, distinguished guests, including General V.N. Sharma, General Deepak Kapoor, General Manoj Pandey, uniform colleagues, veterans, academia, members from the media, ladies and gentlemen. I remember it was in 2008-9 when I was in 2-div and a 2-field officer, Colonel Nagar, walked up to me that it seems like you want to study more. So here are the notes or the future thinking by a bright colonel from my regiment. And I looked through that. I was slightly confused, but I think that is the time I got intrigued that I must follow this colonel more often. And thereafter in 2013-14, I walked up to this colonel who had become a brigadier fresh from NDC and just shook hand with him. I said, I just want to feel you because you always think differently. And it so happened that in 2016, I suddenly found my high command wing commander happens to be the same man, that is General Raj Shukla. So, like he said, that he is always quizzical, he always introduced why. And higher command course, as you know, it always talks about why. And three things which I picked up from him at that point of time, of course, this civil military relations that time, later on fusion. The second thing was foundation for Ops Sindhu. Because if you remember that time Uri had happened and he conducted a detailed discussion and various options. How should we go about the situation which comes in future? So I must concede very frankly as a chief, when this situation came to me, it was a very normal thing for me because I'd already seen this earlier. The third thing which he talked about was the transformation. And if you see today, if the decade of transformation, if we are going through, and of course I give the credit to General Pandey for that to start in 2023, I think the roots or the seeds were sown at that point of time. So when I picked up this book and the ADG Stratcom gave me this book, looked big because the draft is always bigger because in double lines and one side print. So I said, it's too big for me, but it's a deja vu feeling I was getting it because I thought I know it very well. But once I went through the content, I realized actually I should have got it a year back before Raksha Mantri ji announced the year of reforms and me announcing the decade of transformation. So it's a year late book, if I can say that. Because there's so many things which are there, we should have implemented. So maybe I'll request Raksha Mantri ji to consider to continue with year of reforms for 1 year more. So now coming on to this book about the topic, if I say that, in October 77, the author was Mr. P.R. Chari in IDSA, who wrote Civil Military Relations in India. Thereafter, a large number of officers have written about it. St. Joe's wrote about Rooks and Knights in 2017. Then Anit Mukherjee, he's ex-Indian Army officer. He's based in Singapore. He wrote the Absent Dialogue, Politicians, Bureaucrats, and the Military in India. This became a big hit, if I can say that. But when it comes to all these books, they were looking at the void or the spaces which are existing or the gaps which are existing. Here is the book, Civil Military Fusion as a Metric of National Power and Comprehensive Security, which brings out the asset-based thinking, not the deficit-based thinking. That is the most positive aspect of this book, if I can bring it along. So now if we take the journey from civil military relations to the MCF, because MCF is the term which I liked a lot. And the day I took over, I said, hereafter we'll not talk about the CMF, we'll talk about the MCF. The reason is when you talk about the MCF means military has to take the ownership of moving this civil military relationship forward. Earlier, we were always blaming it on or telling that the responsibility lies with the civil. But this is the time the military has to take the ownership. And by that time, I went to the staff college and I saw that they were also talking about it because the China talks about it. So I picked up from page 459 of the DSSC book and I tried to compare the difference between the CMR and the MCF. So as far as the primary objective is concerned, what it talks about, CMR is ensuring democratic control of military and prevent militarization of governance. And when it comes to the MCF, it talks about achieve synergy between civil and military sectors to accelerate military modernization. So actually the comfort zone is MCF for me as a military man. When it talks about the technology integration, it talks about in CMR, limited to civilian oversight of military research and development and procurement with distinct civil and military industries. In the case of MCF, emphasizes and mandates dual-use technology development, integrating civil innovation directly into military applications. So when he talks about the carrier battle group, he's talking about this because that's what is the focus which has been given as far as the Chinese MCF is concerned. The institutional framework. In case of CMR, it talks about often decentralized with separate military and civil institutions operating within defined boundaries under highest political institutions. So everybody has a degree of freedom and there is no connectivity which is available in the civil CMR. When it comes to the MCF, highly centralized under unified authority, that is China's CMC. So as far as this book is concerned, I think it's been written in such a lucid manner where it's been able to identify a sweet spot between the CMR and the MCF. So there's a lesson for the civil, there's a lesson for the military, and all those who form a kind of a joiners in between. He has correctly picked up two success stories of the US, that is civil military integration, and China, that is the MCF, with natural binders of technology, military prowess, and politico-military diplomacy. Being contextual of Ukraine warfare and of Sindoor, actually it makes it a live reading because you're feeling as it is it's a living document. That is how he has gone about it. So when we look at the Oriental perception of growth, we look at socio-cultural factors. These two play a pivotal role, and that is what we are different from the West. So here in our civilizational context, as per the author, as per General Raj Shukla, the CMF symbolizes the fusion of the three goddesses. Saraswati, that is center of knowledge and research. Lakshmi, that is center of business wealth. And Durga, instrument of power. That is how he has given out the fusion in his book. So here I must also quote Kautilya's Saptang theory, wherein he emphasizes that the strength of a state lies not in excellence of one limb, but in the interdependence of all. In contemporary parlance, this resonates with the alignment of DIME. I add technology to it, that is DIME T. That is the instrument of national power. What Kautilya articulates as the interdependence of limbs, we today recognize as CMF. And by this month end, as it is, I am looking at issuing out our envisaged role to synergize with all limbs of the nation, akin to the CMF under the hypothetical umbrella of the NSS or National Security Strategy. This book also covers contemporary global best practices, yet renders in a very Indian idioms, if I can put it across. The book exhorts Indian statecraft to leverage talent, data, and deep technologies, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, military autonomy, quantum, etc., as strategic assets in the resolute service of a national security interest. Through its 120-odd pages, the book chronicles solutions and outcomes in a very pragmatic manner, building resilient supply chains, creating strategic choke points for diplomatic leverage, driving faster cycles in capacity building from prototype to deployment, pushing rapid indigenization at a high scale, and finally fail-proof deterrence, all baked in the source of civil-military fusion. So that's what makes the book so important and salient. The author outlines CMF as a powerful concept and metaphor, an invitation to imaginative, creative, but disciplined action to power India's rise. Once you pick up this book, I don't think you will rest till the time you finish it. And it is so engrossing for the military practitioners that whether you get late for the office or a function doesn't make a difference, you have to finish it. That is what it is so engrossing. So if I have to summarize as to why this book is a must read for all security pundits, I have identified 5 points. It looks enhancing national security, that is CMF integration with civil R&D, private industry, military, with policymakers and financial provisioners, also referred to as whole of nation approach. The second one, recommendations to accelerate defense modernization. The third is leverage emerging technology, establish innovation pipelines from civil sector to military, and also encourage dual use technology. The fourth one, efficient use of national resources and enhanced national resilience, duly integrated with economic and industrial growth. And the final, building a knowledge-based ecosystem. So to conclude, I would say this book is a great aperitif and the main course for PM's clarion call for JAY, that is jointness, Atmanirbharta, and innovation. And now this book will also form part of Chief of Army Staff recommended reading supplementary list. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir. May I now request General Anil Chauhan, Chief of Defense Staff, to kindly deliver the special address.
Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh Ji, Major B.K. Sharma, Director General of the oldest think tank of India. I think it's the oldest in Asia, sir. Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, the author, the cynosure of today's event, former chiefs, distinguished officers, veterans, members of the services fraternity, people in uniform, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. Civil-military fusion, as I had read it, was a term which I thought was originated by the Chinese Communist Party to transform PLA into a world-class military. And that's what I think Raj was also mentioning. There are various kind of phrases which have been used in today's context talking about civil-military fusion, whether you call it civil-military integration, civil-military cooperation, civil-military synergy. So the various terms, and also it has been used sometimes in a sequences being changed, as General Upendra Dwivedi would like to call it. It's a military-civil fusion rather than civil-military fusion. It depends on who's leading this change, the military leading the change or the civil is leading the change. In India too, there have been large number of efforts about this particular fusion. General Shukla has now put it across in his latest well-researched book. My compliments to him for this. Let me try and explain to you civil-military fusion in very, very simple terms. When the government appointed me as the CDS, one of my primary job was to create jointness and integration among the three services. It's a very difficult task, but essential, I think. Civil-military fusion is about jointness and integration at the national level. It's even more difficult, but even more essential. And that's what Raj Shukla has brought out in his book. I must say that it's not that India has not made some efforts toward this. In fact, in the recently held Combined Commanders Conference, the political leadership gave us some directions in which they asked the military to take lead in some of these initiatives where we can integrate. And some of them I may mention toward the later part of my talk. So as General Raj Shukla has put it, civil-military fusion entails convergence of all the arrows in the quiver of nation statecraft, the military, the scientific community, the industry, academia, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the resolute pursuit of national security and technological sovereignty. Our uniformed services, the military, paramilitary, and the CAPF, along with diplomacy, science, research and development, public and private sector, startups, the commercial space ecosystem, academia, the thought leadership, must all come together in a fused enterprise. Only such a fusion can enhance our economic productivity, accelerate technological progress, and strengthen our strategic and military heft. It's all well known that the combined efforts always produce more energy than the simple sum of these products in an individual kind of constituent manner. And this is not rocket science, it's been told to us right from our Vedic times. Raj Shukla, it's always difficult to speak actually after the author, and Chief has also spoken and given some ideas about it. Raj has actually spoken about how civil-military fusion is being practiced, say in China, in Israel, and how the US is attempting to follow it. Let me give you some basic examples in what little manner we are attempting this as baby steps and nascent steps towards it. You know, when I'm talking about civil-military relationship or civil-military fusion, we're also looking at from the civilian side what the government expects. So it's the government's aim, basically, should be to provide socio-economic development of our people, eradication of poverty, development of infrastructure, providing employment, etc. Besides, of course, this can't happen unless there is a secure environment. This will all happen when there is a secure environment, which of course is the later part, that military part of it. And armed forces are aligned and they're contributing towards it. When we talk about socio-political initiatives, we have initiatives like Nari Shakti, Swachh Bharat, Amrit Sarovar, Ek Ped, Maa Ke Naam. We have development projects like Skill India, Digital India, Make in India, National Solar Mission, Gati Shakti, Vibrant Villages, national building programs like Atmanirbharta, Make in India, Sagar, that's Mahasagar now, Act East. Armed forces have been doing this in bits and parts and fits and starts, I would say, for quite some time. But now there's a more focused and organized approach towards it. And one of the reasons behind it is, I think, the creation of this post of this Department of Military Affairs and creating the secretary. So this particular gap which was there between the political authority and the military, that has been bridged by this particular appointment, Secretary DMA. And now as Secretary DMA, one would be privy to, say, Council of Ministers meeting, number of parliamentary committees. We recently held one consultative committee of the parliament. So you can understand what the civilian side requires or demands from the military. Of course, the other important part on which today's talk was, today's book is about the military part of it, how to develop a military's capabilities. The military dimension is important. And it is important because this civil development, which we just spoke about, can only be possible once there is a secure environment in the country. So a number of initiatives for this particular fusion have also been taken or in vogue. First would be, say, like in defense R&D, I think there is a necessity to fuse the policymakers and the innovators together. And some small examples or nation stem toward this is in the initiative like IDEX programs. Similarly, I think in the area of defense manufacturing, there has to be a fusion of the government and the industry. We need to create a level playing field for the private industry and help the private and public sector. They should work together. We should have MSMEs and startups to collaborate. They all should be working towards national security. And towards this end, at least as Secretary DMA or say CDS, I have made a couple of initiatives like when we started future warfare course, this particular courses are open to the academia. This is open to the young startups and industry people. We have a number of national technology missions. The government has announced whether they are in autonomous systems, quantum technologies, semiconductors, artificial intelligence. They all must be integrated together. And again, in this recently held Combined Commanders Conference, it was felt that in these national technology missions, there is a necessity or the importance of integrating the military officers as part of it. So shortly, we'll have in most of these national technology missions, armed forces officers as part of it. Similarly, is the case of infrastructure development. We have to think how can we fuse initiatives like Gati Shakti, Vibrant Village Program, and the border roads organizations. We can do it by developing dual-use roads, tunnels, airstrips, communication networks. Infrastructure serving national development is also strengthening border security and military mobility. So this all goes hand in hand. Another important arena where we can take an example of civil-military fusion in India could be resource sharing. We can do this by integrating the civil and defense assets for mutual benefits. Two good examples which come to my mind are first is joint user airfields. Indian Air Force and the civil aviation share runways, airspace, and logistic infrastructure at bases like Leh, Srinagar, Pune, Agra. Development of greenfield airfields needs an investment of almost about 1,500 to 2,000 crores. This can be saved by using this joint user airfield concept. And of course, this particular travel mission of India that everyone should be able to fly, the UDAN mission, that's got a boost because of joint user airfields. A similar kind of initiative which the Indian Air Force had taken was flexi use of airspace, in which it enables shared and coordinated access between civil aviation and the armed forces through dynamic release of restricted military airspace, which is largely centered around central India, that is in the area of Gwalior for civilian flights. And this has led to a huge saving because civil flights can use that particular corridor to make people, everyone actually, to reach faster to the destinations and at a lesser cost and lesser CO2 emissions. That's almost about 54,000 tons of CO2 emissions have been saved in this manner in the past 3 or 4 years. So Raj Shukla, Percepts chief has spoken about it. Raj Shukla has spoken about it himself actually. So there's nothing really much for me to add in this particular comments of mine. I would say that what Raj has essentially said is he's actually emphasized something to do about old civilizational wisdom, which advocates the convergence of robust intermingling of the tenets of Saraswati, which is the temple of learning, Lakshmi, that centers of wealth creation, and Durga, which should remain as an instrument of national power. Raj Shukla, he's of course spoken about all those statistics about China and various kind of initiatives. There's no need for me to repeat that. I could only say that this book on civil military fusion is timely and it's an insightful contribution to the national discourse. It unveils the challenges before us, analyzes global best practices, and attempts to seek a possible roadmap for India. It deserves a serious and critical read, not only because it is intellectually rigorous, but because it addresses one of India's most urgent strategic imperatives. I congratulate the author for his scholarly and strategic contribution and commend the book to one and all. May it inspire new thoughts, foster deep collaboration, and ignite a national vision for the fusion of our civil and military strengths. Thank you and happy reading. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the moment we all are waiting to listen. The wisdom of our chief guest, the Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh Ji. May I request the Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh Ji, to kindly deliver the keynote address, sir.
मैंने कहा कि सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन की बात हो रही है और मिलिट्री के लोग यहाँ से बोले जनरल अनिल चौहान, चीफ ऑफ डिफेंस स्टाफ, जनरल उपेंद्र द्विवेदी, चीफ ऑफ आर्मी स्टाफ, लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल रिटायर्ड राज शुक्ला, मेंबर यूनियन पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन, मेजर जनरल रिटायर्ड बीके शर्मा, डायरेक्टर जनरल यूनाइटेड सर्विस इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया, और हमारे दोस्त एम अकबर साहब, आर्म फोर्सेस के ऑफिसर्स और वेटरन्स, भारत सरकार के अन्य यहाँ पर अधिकारी वर्ग, डिप्लोमेट्स, मीडिया के मित्रों और अन्य देवी व सज्जनों, आज लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला की बुक सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन एज ए मैट्रिक ऑफ नेशनल पावर एंड कम्प्रिहेंसिव सिक्योरिटी के इस विमोचन के कार्यक्रम में मुझे उपस्थित होना ये अच्छा लगा है। सबसे पहले तो मैं लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला समेत आप सबको इस पुस्तक के लिए हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं। आप ये कहेंगे कि केवल लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला को ही आपने क्यों बधाई नहीं दी, हम सबको दे रहे हैं, क्योंकि इस पुस्तक को सरसरी तौर पर हमने देखा है और मैं कह सकता हूं कि यह हम सब के लिए उपयोगी है। इसलिए लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला के साथ साथ मैं आप सबको कांग्रेचुलेट कर रहा हूं। कोई भी किताब भले ही कुछ महीनों में या कुछ वर्षों में लिखी जाती है, लेकिन उसके पीछे उस लेखक का वर्षों का एक्सपीरियंस और दशकों की इंस्पिरेशन और सैकड़ों वर्षों की नॉलेज और विजडम छिपी होती है। अनेक वर्षों तक आपने जो चिंतन किया, उसके परिणाम स्वरूप यह किताब हम सबके सामने है और मैं आपको इसलिए भी बधाई देता हूं क्योंकि आपने इस किताब में जो विषय को चुना है वह सिर्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव नहीं है, बल्कि इंटेलेक्चुअल और मॉरल डिस्कोर्स का भी वह एक हिस्सा है। हालांकि मैं स्वीकार करता हूं कि मैं अभी तक पूरी तरह किताब नहीं पढ़ पाया हूं, लेकिन किताब पढ़ते हुए जो कुछ हिस्से अब तक पढ़ पाया उन पर मैं कुछ बातें यहां पर जरूर करना चाहूंगा। मेरा पहला ध्यान किताब के ब्लर्ब पर गया, जिसमें लिखा था कि दशकों से भारत समेत अनेक देशों ने सिविल और मिलिट्री एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को अलग अलग रखा हुआ है और इसके पीछे फियर ऑफ मिलिटराइजेशन की बात कही गई है। अर्थात मिलिटराइजेशन के डर से सिविल और मिलिट्री एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन अलग अलग रखे जाते हैं। सही बताऊं तो इस लाइन पर मेरी निगाह कुछ देर के लिए रुकी। मुझे लगा कि इस सोच को भारत की कल्चरल और हिस्टोरिकल जमीन पर रख कर देखना जरूरी भी है। भारत जैसे देश में जहां लोगों को शासन पर, प्रशासन पर और संविधान पर इतना भरोसा है, जहां पर धर्म के प्रति लोगों की इतनी गहरी निष्ठा हो, ऐसे देश में सिर्फ मिलिटराइजेशन के डर के कारण सिविल और मिलिट्री एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को अलग अलग रखा गया हो, इस बात से मैं उतना सहमत नहीं हो पाता हूं। सहमत इसलिए नहीं हो पाता हूं क्योंकि जब मैं इस विचार पर सोचता हूं तो मुझे रामायण का एक अत्यंत प्रेरक प्रसंग याद आता है। आप याद करिए, जब भगवान श्री राम ने उनको वनवास मिला था और वे लक्ष्मण था माता सीता के साथ वन में निवास कर रहे थे, उसी दौरान भरत अयोध्या के तमाम लोगों के साथ और अयोध्या की सेना के साथ भगवान राम को वापस बुलाने जाते हैं। यहां ध्यान रखिए कि भरत उस समय अयोध्या की सेना के कमांडर इन चीफ थे। जब भरत अपने विशाल दलबल के साथ वन की ओर बढ़ रहे थे, उस समय लक्ष्मण जी ने उन्हें आते हुए देखा। लक्ष्मण जी को यह लगा कि भरत के पास तो पूरी सेना है, कहीं वह इस उद्देश्य से तो वन में नहीं आ रहे हैं कि हम तीनों पर आक्रमण करके हमेशा के लिए अयोध्या के राजा बन जाएं। उनकी दृष्टि में शंका की एक झलक थी। उन्हें लगा शायद भरत राज्य प्राप्त करने के लिए आ रहे हैं। जब लक्ष्मण जी ने भगवान राम से अपनी यह शंका बताई तो भगवान श्री राम ने बड़ी शांति और बहुत ही समझदारी और यह सूझबूझ से कहा था, भरत ही, तुलसीदास जी ने लिखा है, भरत ही होई न राय मधु, वेदे हरि हर पद पाई, कबहू की काजी सिकरनी, क्षीर सिंधु बिरसाई। अर्थात चाहे कितनी भी बड़ी सेना हो, चाहे कितना भी बड़ा साम्राज्य हो, भारत को कभी भी राजमद नहीं हो सकता है। चाहे उन्हें ब्रह्मा, विष्णु, महेश या इंद्र का ही पद क्यों न मिल जाए, भरत सदैव विनम्र रहेंगे, क्योंकि भरत के अंदर जो मूल्य हैं वे मूल्य उनको राजमद की किसी भी सूरत में इजाजत नहीं देंगे। ठीक उसी प्रकार से यदि दूध से भरा हुआ क्षीर सागर हो तो उसमें एक दो बूंद खटाई की गिर जाने से वह कभी खराब नहीं होगा। यह नियम एक पतीले दूध पर भी लागू हो सकता है। भारत उसी प्रकार से क्षीर सागर हैं। ये छोटी चीजें उनमें राजमद नहीं ला सकती हैं, और हुआ भी यही। जब भरत आए तो लक्ष्मण के मन की सारी शंकाएं स्वतः समाप्त हो गई। साथियों, मैं समझता हूं कि यह सामान्य घटना नहीं है, यह बल्कि भारत की सभ्यता और उसकी विशिष्ट सिविल मिलिट्री कॉन्शसनेस का एक प्रतीक है। जब हम इस विचार को समझते हैं तो हमें यह महसूस होता है कि भारत की परंपरा में कभी भी मिलिटराइजेशन उस अर्थ में नहीं रहा जिसमें शक्ति का मतलब सत्ता हथियाना या शासन पर अधिकार जमाना हो। हमारे यहाँ हमेशा पावर का उद्देश्य लोगों का संरक्षण और उनकी सेवा करना रहा है, और इसी कारण भारत में कभी भी सिविल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और मिलिट्री के बीच कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की स्थिति कभी नहीं पैदा हुई, क्योंकि दोनों का उद्देश्य राष्ट्र की रक्षा और जनता की सेवा ही रहा है। हालांकि शुक्ला जी ने अपनी पुस्तक में एक आर्टिकल का रेफरेंस दिया है जिसके अनुसार नेहरू जी एक बार रक्षा मंत्रालय गए। वहां उन्होंने यूनिफॉर्म में कुछ अफसर्स को देखा। अफसर्स को देखकर वह थोड़े से असहज हो गए और उन्हें लगा ये लोग यहाँ मंत्रालय में क्या कर रहे हैं। लेकिन यह सब पुरानी बातें हो गई हैं। आज ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। आज तो मैं खुद ही कई बार सीडीएस को या सर्विस चीफ्स को अपनी फोर्स की वर्दी में देखता हूं तो मेरा देश की सुरक्षा के प्रति विश्वास और या कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल कहिए और अधिक बढ़ जाता है और मेरा हौसला बुलंद होता है। दरअसल भारत में मिलिटराइजेशन का डर वेस्टर्न थॉट की उपज है, ऐसा मैं मानता हूं। वेस्ट में सत्ता के साथ सस्पिशन जुड़ा रहता है, जबकि भारत में सत्ता के साथ सैक्रिफाइस जुड़ी हुई है। अतीत का हमने एक उदाहरण देख लिया है। आधुनिक युग का भी एक उदाहरण देख लीजिए। भारत की संसद में खड़े होकर श्रद्धेय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने कहा था कि अपने इथिक्स से समझौता करके अगर सत्ता हासिल करनी हो तो मैं ऐसी सत्ता को चिमटे से भी छूना पसंद नहीं करूंगा। और उनका एक भाषण शायद आपको याद होगा वो लाइन, उन्होंने कहा एक वोट का केवल अंतर था जिसमें उनकी पराजय हुई थी संसद में। उन्होंने कहा सरकारें आएंगी जाएंगी लेकिन देश रहना चाहिए। इसलिए मैं सत्ता प्राप्त करने के लिए अनैतिक साधन का उपयोग नहीं करूंगा, धन का उपयोग नहीं करूंगा। इस तरह का भाव तभी आ सकता है जब इस देश के अंदर सत्ता से भी ऊपर एथिक्स और मॉरलिटी को रखा जाए। और हमारा देश ऐसा ही है, इसकी संस्कृति भी ऐसी ही है। इसलिए मैं कतई स्वीकार नहीं कर पाता हूं कि भारत में मिलिटराइजेशन के डर से किसी सर्विस या उसके रोल को अलग किया गया हो। दरअसल सिविल और मिलिट्री एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के बीच जो फर्क दिखाई देता है उसका कारण किसी तरह का आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस नहीं है, बल्कि इसका मूल आधार डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर यानी वर्क का साइंटिफिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है। यह कंसेप्ट नया नहीं है। यह मानव सभ्यता की उन सबसे बड़ी अचीवमेंट्स में से एक है जिसने सोसाइटी को ऑर्गेनाइज्ड, एफिशिएंट और प्रोडक्टिव बनाया है। डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर का सिंपल अर्थ है जिस व्यक्ति में जिस काम की एबिलिटी और स्किल है वही काम उसे दिया जाए, क्योंकि कोई भी व्यक्ति अकेले सब कुछ नहीं कर सकता है। एक ही व्यक्ति एक साथ न खेती कर सकता है, न खाना बना सकता है, न हथियार बना सकता है, न युद्ध लड़ सकता है और न इलाज कर सकता है। लेकिन अलग अलग व्यक्ति यह सारे काम जरूर कर सकते हैं और इसी प्रिंसिपल्स के तहत सिविल और मिलिट्री को अलग रखा गया, जिसका सिर्फ यही उद्देश्य था कि हर क्षेत्र में प्रोफेशनलिज्म और एक्सलेंस को इंश्योर किया जाए। हां, अब जमाने की डिमांड कुछ और है। आज दुनिया डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर से आगे बढ़कर इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ पर्पस की ओर बढ़ रही है। आज दुनिया डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर से आगे बढ़कर इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ पर्पस की ओर बढ़ रही है। अब जरूरत इस बात की है कि हम अलग अलग जिम्मेदारियां निभाते हुए भी एक शेयर्ड विजन और कॉमन पर्पस के साथ काम करें। साथियों, हमारा सिविल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और मिलिट्री डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर के मामले में अलग जरूर है, लेकिन यह कहते हुए मुझे खुशी होती है कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने सरकार में आते ही सबसे पहले इस बात पर ध्यान केंद्रित किया कि कोई भी प्रशासन साइलोस में रहकर काम नहीं कर सकता है और उसे एक दूसरे के साथ मिलजुल कर ही काम करना पड़ेगा। अगर हम इतिहास पर नजर डालें तो पाएंगे दुनिया की सभी महान शक्तियां केवल अपनी मिलिट्री स्ट्रेंथ के दम पर नहीं, दुनिया की तमाम जितनी भी महान शक्तियां हैं केवल अपनी स्ट्रेंथ पर ही नहीं बल्कि साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी की ताकत के बल पर शीर्ष पर पहुंची है। यूरोप का इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन इसका सबसे बड़ा उदाहरण है, जहां लैबोरेटरीज और यूनिवर्सिटीज में हुई डिस्कवरीज ने बैटल फील्ड पर विजय का रास्ता तैयार किया था। कोल्ड वार के दौर में भी हमने देखा कि दो सुपर पावर्स ने बिना एक भी गोली चलाए टेक्नोलॉजिकल सुपरमेसी की जंग लड़ी और उस समय यह बात पूरी तरह से स्पष्ट हो गई थी कि आने वाले समय में साइंटिफिक इनोवेशन और मिलिट्री स्ट्रेंथ को अलग अलग नहीं देखा जा सकता है। साथियों, आज दुनिया एक गहरे परिवर्तन के दौर से गुजर रही है और जिस गति से ग्लोबल ऑर्डर बदल रहा है उसी तरीके से, उसी तेजी से वारफेयर के तरीके भी बदल रहे हैं। अब युद्ध सिर्फ सीमाओं पर नहीं लड़े जाते, वे हाइब्रिड और असिमेट्रिकल स्वरूप ले चुके हैं और इनके थिएटर्स ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जमीन से लेकर आउटर स्पेस तक फैले हुए हैं। ऐसे समय में ट्रेडिशनल डिफेंस आउटलुक अब पर्याप्त नहीं रह गया है। अगर हमें इन बदली परिस्थितियों का सामना करना है तो हमारी डिफेंस स्ट्रेटजीज को अधिक कोऑर्डिनेटेड, एडेप्टिव और प्री इम्प्टिव होना होगा और हमारी सरकार ने फ्यूचर रेडी और रोबस्ट आर्म फोर्सेस के निर्माण के लिए कई बोल्ड और डिसाइसिव रिफॉर्म्स भी किए हैं और ये रिफॉर्म्स भारत की नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के साथ साथ हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी को भी इंश्योर करते हैं। इनमें से एक ऐतिहासिक कदम था चीफ ऑफ डिफेंस स्टाफ के पद का सृजन। यह निर्णय तीनों सेनाओं के बीच कोऑर्डिनेटेड और सिनर्जी को मजबूत करने की दिशा में एक महत्वपूर्ण मील का पत्थर साबित हुआ। जो ही रक्षा मंत्रालय की जिम्मेदारी प्राप्त हुई थी, हम प्रधानमंत्री जी बैठे थे। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने उसी समय चर्चा की कि राजनाथ जी अब समय आ गया है कि सीडीएस के पद का क्रिएशन किया जाना चाहिए। अभी रिसेंट उदाहरण के रूप में आप ऑपरेशन सिंदूर को देख सकते हैं। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के दौरान तीनों सेनाओं के बीच असाधारण ज्वाइंटनेस और इंटीग्रेशन को देखने को हम सबको मिला है। उस ज्वाइंटनेस और इंटीग्रेशन का परिणाम क्या हुआ, यह तो पूरी दुनिया ने देखा है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने पाकिस्तान को चारों खाने चित्त करने का काम किया है और वह आज भी उस दर्द से वो भूल नहीं पाया है। और साथियों, यह पुस्तक लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला जी की सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन की अवधारणा को आज की ग्लोबल जियोपॉलिटिक्स के परिप्रेक्ष्य में भी रखती है और इस पुस्तक को पढ़ने के दौरान मेरे लिए एक इंपॉर्टेंट टेक अवे यह रहा है कि सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन को केवल इंटीग्रेशन के रूप में नहीं बल्कि एक स्ट्रेटेजिक इनेबलर के रूप में देखा जाना चाहिए, ऐसा मेरा मानना है। यह ऐसा इनेबलर है जो इनोवेशन को बढ़ावा देता है, टैलेंट को बनाए रखता है और हमें टेक्नोलॉजिकल सेल्फ रिलायंस की दिशा में भी यह अग्रसर करता है। और यह फ्यूजन तभी संभव है जब हम अपनी सिविल इंडस्ट्री, प्राइवेट सेक्टर, एकेडमिया और डिफेंस सेक्टर को एक कॉमन नेशनल पर्पज के लिए जोड़ सकें। इससे हमारी इकोनॉमिक प्रोडक्टिविटी और स्ट्रेटेजिक एज भी स्वाभाविक रूप से कई गुना बढ़ जाती है। इसी सोच और इसी सिनर्जी के साथ हमें आगे बढ़ने की जरूरत है। साथियों, आज जब हम टेक्नोलॉजिकल एरा में प्रवेश कर चुके हैं तो हमारे लिए समझना आवश्यक है कि भारत में सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन का स्वरूप कैसा होना चाहिए। हमें सिलेक्टेड टास्क और कोर चैलेंजेस की पहचान करनी होगी और बहुत ही एक बैलेंस्ड, फोकस्ड अप्रोच भी अपनानी होगी ताकि हमारी सिविलियन टेक्नोलॉजिकल कैपेबिलिटीज का उपयोग इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशंस को ध्यान में रखते हुए मिलिट्री डोमेन में भी प्रभावी रूप से किया जा सके। कई बार हम लोगों ने देखा है कि हमारी कई इंपॉर्टेंट टेक्नोलॉजी केवल सिविलियन यूज तक ही सीमित रह जाती हैं, जबकि वही इनोवेशंस और ड्वेल यूज कंसेप्ट के तहत मिलिट्री एप्लीकेशंस में लाई जाएं और डिफेंस में इस्तेमाल होने वाली टेक्नोलॉजी अगर सिविल यूज में लाई जाएं तो ये हमारी नेशनल पावर को कई गुना बढ़ा सकती हैं। साथियों, आज के समय में हम सभी देख रहे हैं कि शासन का तरीका भी बदल चुका है। देश का विकास सरकार, प्राइवेट सेक्टर और सिविल सोसाइटी के बीच एक मजबूत कोलैबोरेशन से हो रहा है और इस समय हर विभाग, हर संस्था मिलकर काम कर रही है। इसे ही आज की भाषा में होल ऑफ गवर्नमेंट और होल ऑफ सोसाइटी अप्रोच कहा जाता है। और इसका सीधा अर्थ यही है, जब देश के विकास और सुरक्षा की बात आती है तो हर व्यक्ति, हर संस्था की भागीदारी ये जरूरी होती है और हम सब इस सोच का हिस्सा हैं, क्योंकि जब देश की बात आती है तो जिम्मेदारी सिर्फ सरकार की नहीं बल्कि हम सब की होती है। हम सबको इसके बारे में सोचना पड़ता है। साथियों, आज के ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव में हम स्पष्ट रूप से देख रहे हैं सिविल और मिलिट्री डोमेन्स धीरे धीरे एक दूसरे में मर्ज हो रहे हैं। टेक्नोलॉजी, इकोनॉमी और नेशनल सिक्योरिटी अब पहले से कहीं अधिक इंटरलिंक्ड हैं। इंफॉर्मेशन, सप्लाई चेन, ट्रेड, रेयर मिनरल्स और कटिंग एज टेक्नोलॉजी, लगभग हर चीज का यूज सिविल और मिलिट्री दोनों ही डोमेन में हो रहा है। ऐसी परिस्थितियों में सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन एक मॉडर्न ट्रेंड नहीं, इसे मॉडर्न ट्रेंड नहीं मानता मैं। ऐसी परिस्थितियों में सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन केवल एक मॉरल ट्रेंड नहीं बल्कि यह समय की जरूरत बन गई है। इसे इग्नोर करना या इसमें डिले करना किसी भी देश के स्ट्रेटेजिक ग्रोथ के लिए सही नहीं है। मित्रों, भारत में यह प्रक्रिया तेजी से अब आगे बढ़ रही है। हम देख रहे हैं कि हमारी आर्म फोर्सेस, गवर्नमेंट, इंडस्ट्री, स्टार्टअप, रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट्स और युवा इनोवेटर्स मिलकर यह काम कर रहे हैं। अगर हम अपने हाल के प्रयासों पर नजर डालें तो हम पाएंगे कि सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन की दिशा में भारत ने कई ठोस कदम भी उठाए हैं। हमने डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग और पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप को बढ़ावा दिया है। डिफेंस स्टार्टअप्स को प्रमोट करते हुए हमने एकेडमिया के साथ इंडस्ट्रीज की पार्टनरशिप को भी बढ़ाया है और हम सब ने पिछले कुछ वर्षों में भारत के डिफेंस इकोसिस्टम में एक ऐतिहासिक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन को भी देखा है। कभी हम दुनिया के सबसे बड़े डिफेंस इंपोर्टर्स में गिने जाते थे और आज हम तेजी से डिफेंस सेक्टर के मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब के रूप में उभर रहे हैं। पिछले कुछ वर्षों के हमारे लगातार प्रयासों से के कारण भारत का डिफेंस सेक्टर आज ऊंचाइयों को छू रहा है। डोमेस्टिक डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन का आंकड़ा जो एक दशक पहले 46,000 करोड़ के आसपास था, वह अब बढ़कर 1.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से अधिक का हो गया है और इनमें से लगभग 33,000 करोड़ रुपए का कंट्रीब्यूशन यदि किसी का है तो वह प्राइवेट सेक्टर का है, और यह अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन है। सब मिलाकर कहा जाए तो इस पुस्तक में जो बातें की गई हैं, जो भी सुझाव दिए गए हैं, राज शुक्ला जी को यह जानकर सुखद आश्चर्य होगा कि उनमें से अनेक सुझावों पर ऑलरेडी सरकार ने काम करना शुरू कर दिया है, और उनकी पुस्तक में सेमी कंडक्टर, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, बायोटेक्नोलॉजी जैसे इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजी पर जो बातें की गई हैं, उस पर भी हम लोगों ने गंभीरतापूर्वक विचार करते हुए काम करने की प्रक्रिया प्रारंभ की है। साथियों, इस दुनिया में जितने भी बड़े बड़े कवि और लेखक हुए हैं, जिन्होंने किसी समस्या पर या किसी चुनौती पर कोई कविता लिखी हो या कोई पुस्तक लिखी हो, उन सबके मन में एक बात जरूर रहती है। वह सारे कवि और सारे लेखक यह बात जरूर चाहते हैं, उनकी कविता और उनकी पुस्तक का रेलेवेंस खत्म हो जाए। तो आपको आश्चर्य होगा कि मैं क्या कह रहा हूं। सभी यह लिखने वाले चाहते हैं कि उनकी कविता और उनका पुस्तक का रेलेवेंस एक समय ऐसा आए कि खत्म हो जाए। यानी एक समय ऐसा है जब वह समस्या या वह चुनौती पूरी तरह खत्म हो जाए, जिसको केंद्र में रखकर वह पुस्तक या किताब लिखी गई है। जैसे मान लीजिए किसी कवि ने गरीब को केंद्र में रखकर कोई कविता लिखी हो, तो जिस दिन गरीबी खत्म होगी, उस दिन सबसे ज्यादा खुश वह कवि होगा कि अब उसकी कविता का महत्व खत्म हो गया। मैं समझता हूं लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला ने सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन को केंद्र में रखते हुए जिस तरह से यह पुस्तक लिखी है, हमारे प्रयासों से जल्द ही आने वाले समय में इस पुस्तक में उनके इस पुस्तक में इस पुस्तक में उनके द्वारा सुझाए गए उपायों का रेलेवेंस खत्म हो गया। यानी कि राज शुक्ला जी के ऊपर आने वाले समय में एक और बड़ी जिम्मेदारी आने वाली है कि वह एक और नए विचार के साथ और एक नए सुझाव, एक नए विचार और एक नए सुझाव के साथ एक नई किताब लिखें। मैं राज शुक्ला जी को उनकी आगामी पुस्तकों के लिए भी ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि आज इस कार्यक्रम में शायद वो अकेले आए हैं। आज सिविल मिलिट्री फ्यूजन की बात करते हैं। अक्लेमंद इशारा काफी समझ गए होंगे आप। मैं ईश्वर से ही प्रार्थना करता हूं कि ईश्वर इसी तरह से राज शुक्ला जी को नए विचार और नए सुझाव देने के लिए तथा हमें उन सुझावों पर काम करते रहने के लिए शक्ति प्रदान करे। और इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं आप सभी के प्रति आभार व्यक्त करते हुए अपना निवेदन समाप्त करता हूं। आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you very much, sir. May I now request the Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh Ji and other dignitaries on stage to kindly release the book, please. May I also call upon on the stage the publisher, Ms. Rajan Arya, and Professor Dilip Shah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. There is hot cup of tea waiting outside, sir. Thank you very much, sir.